Okay, it's 1:34. Welcome to Trenches. Amanda, we want to get Jean on a team. And that'll be on my team. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Down.
How dare you? I need to get some points open.
It's okay, Billy. You were on the phone. I figured you'd get it to you.
Yeah.
Okay, the rules of the game are that each of us, after we do our normal beginnings, each of us will think about the best real estate story we have to date. And you're going to get points on content, presentation, and how useful that story is to the rest of your career and the careers of those on the table. So, first of all, Carl, tell us who's winning and who's not, please. With enthusiasm, please.
Well then, with gusto, I can tell you that my team is winning.
Here we go.
Everyone else's teams are not. Team 2, oh, Captain Me, look at that, with Billy and Amanda, 34 points. And that doesn't include Billy's, so Team 2 looks like we're starting off strong there. Team 3 just behind with 18 points, or 28 if you count Chelsea's mythical 10 that she just made up.
That are in the email, and there's proof.
Okay.
Allegedly. And then Team 1, no one's contributed any points yet. But
That changes today.
yes,
Your name badge on for points.
Captain Suzanne ain't gonna stand for that.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Carl. That was Billy.
You're welcome.
Okay. I need 2 success stories, please.
Yeah.
2 success stories in.
Not including what's going on here?
Well.
Yeah, not your most successful story, but a success in the
Success
last.
for the moment.
Okay.
Not the most
Was your most
successful.
successful story this last week?
Just 2. I mean, no.
I-
Like I normally do, I need a
Every
success
week we
story.
do 2 success stories
1 or 2.
and 2 problem stories.
I can report that Kathy left town for a few days and our team did not explode in flames. And I do feel like that's a success.
It is.
We just sort of melted around the feet.
Well, here's my, did anybody show up with me?
We all showed up with you.
At least one day. Open house, because I knew you would be checking the century lock.
Okay. So that's one success story. The team didn't fail. That's a good sign. Any other success stories? Amanda?
We got an offer, and it was accepted with 2 very difficult sellers on our little 3-bedroom ranch. Yeah.
So what did you do right to make sure that offer came through?
What did I do right? Well, we market to every edge of the globe, really.
But at what point did that offer show up? After we got a $5,000 price raise?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
So we'd asked for that for like over a week and a half. We finally got it the next day.
The next day, yeah.
Dang.
Full price cash.
How many people around the table have listings? Raise your hand if you have a listing.
I just lost my last one.
Aww.
But,
Cat was the word, not cat.
right.
Okay, so those of you with listings, do you have a date on your calendar by which you decide it's time to talk to your seller about price adjustments? If you don't, you should. It's a subject that I think a lot of, especially neophyte licensees, are afraid to talk about. And when you take a listing, do you tell the seller what the home is going to sell for, or do you have a selling price range?
Well, that's an interesting question. I have a tendency to kind of get a feel for what my clients feel the property's worth. I do a CMA. So, I sit down and, based on that and what they feel it's worth, I'm willing to work with it. I'll say, if that's what you feel it's worth, this is what we'll do. We'll go ahead and market it at that price, okay? But here's some indicators that will tell us whether it's too high or we're on target. So if these indicators come in, then we need to make some adjustments. And I absolutely don't have a problem telling him that we need to adjust prices.
Excellent, especially because he's prepared them for that. He said in advance, what do you think it's worth? We can try that. But the market dictates this price to this price, and so he's preparing them for that monthly, no less than, no greater than monthly. I would, if you go 2 months with very few showings and no offers, there's something wrong, and you should have prepared them in advance. We always do a marketing price range. On the high-end properties, that spread might be $20,000. On the lower end price range, it might be a $10,000 spread. But don't get in a situation where your seller says, "But you told me my home would sell for exactly this." You'll never get there. Your home, based upon what the market is dictating, the right price, marketing price range is between blank and blank. Why don't we try what price you have in mind for 30 days? At the end of 30 days, let's talk again. Let's potentially adjust the price. We have that meeting with that conversation with every seller. And Gene, you always do a net sheet on every listing?
I do.
Does anybody?
I never ask for their price. I never ask them what their bottom dollar is or how much they owe on the property. It's none of my business. And the reason I don't ask them for that is because inevitably, the first time I do ask them for that, what's your bottom dollar? Some yahoo is going to come along and offer them the bottom dollar price. And they're going to be like,
Oh, you did.
you told them what my bottom dollar was. You know? So I'm like, don't share with me what your bottom dollar is. I don't want to know what your bottom dollar is. We will negotiate each contract as it comes to us. So my job is to present every offer to you regardless of how low it is. Do not shoot the messenger. If some guy comes in and lowballs your property, then we will deal with that offer, you know. So, but I don't like to know what they owe on their property. I don't like to know what their bottom dollar is. Because if for some reason some person walks in there and makes an offer that just hits it head on, that it looks too suspicious.
So don't we all do our business a little differently?
Yes, we do.
He's not wrong, and the way we do it wouldn't be wrong either. I do want to know what they owe, but that's a personal preference. My biggest concern is, in fact, I had an intelligent seller the other day who we'd worked with before as a buyer, and ultimately she decided to get married instead and left to Anchorage, but she liked us, and when it was time to sell her condo, she called me the other day. And one of the first things, because I knew she hadn't lived there more than 3 years, one of my first questions was, what do you owe? She had no clue there was cost to sell a house. She thought that since she owed $240 to sell for $260, she would be in good shape. So we went through the numbers, and she would have been in the whole $7,000 to sell it at what the market dictated. So I sort of want to know, because if I had not asked the question, we might be on the market today with no hope of selling it. She's not willing to bring money to the table.
There are instances when you have to know.
Exactly.
Okay, let's say that you sold the house to somebody 2 years ago, and
There you go.
and they want to sell it.
Oh, yeah,
Okay, well,
exactly.
what do you owe now? This is what it's going to cost you to sell it. So you need to be prepared for that.
Absolutely. The pricing, what people don't know. Just because we're in the business, we think they know what we know, and they oftentimes know nothing. I had a seller once when I asked her if she'd ever been in a crawl space, because what we worried about in crawl spaces.
Moisture.
Moisture, thank you.
Thank you, Billy. I'm sorry, too soon.
He's already suffered enough.
I know.
But no, I had a seller once, I said, you ever been in your crawl space? She said, I don't know. What is that? What's a crawl space? I said, well, it's what's underground. And why don't we take a look at it? And I opened up the hatch, and it smelled really, really musty and damp. And needless to say, she had to do a lot of work down there, and something she was not even aware of. So don't assume your sellers are as smart as you are. Okay, so do we have any field problems, anybody? And we can fix them all right here.
Any what?
Field problems.
Field problems?
Field, like any problem with your buyers or seller clients or
I've got
title people or renters.
a problem down in Soldotna. Helped a lady sell her cabin She has accumulated stuff since the 1960s in that cabin. We got permission from the new buyer to take it till June 23rd, 22nd to remove all of those personal belongings. So the first trip was last weekend. Her son went down there. The buyer who rushed to record early was not pleased that they were going down with short notice and had somebody go check on it, and it turns out the son stayed the night there and he was ultra not pleased. So the seller was anticipating being able to stay the night since it's a 6-hour round trip. The buyer said, no, you can't stay the night. So I'm currently working with Jack White and Soldotna, and we'll be figuring that out.
So why did he rush to record it? With all her personal belongings left in the building?
I think he just wanted to get it done.
He just wanted to own it, and they were working out the details of the stuff.
We did a very significant price drop, which motivated him to write the offer. So I don't think that he wanted it to be prolonged at all. I think that if anything, any hiccup came along the way, he knew that it would not last.
So what does the recording date have to do with the agreement though, to get out? Just
We could have just been in contract this whole, he's not in state, he doesn't live in state. We could have just been in contract this whole time while she slowly moved things.
so that
would have
she
been
would have
much
still had
smarter.
control of the property.
Right, that would have been much smarter, and also, the way I should have done things was be more explicit and possibly even figure out an occupancy after recording or something like
That's
that.
exactly what you should have done, yeah. Did you get an agreement to store stuff on the
Yes.
property?
Yeah,
That was written into the contract.
yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is tricky.
Did you put anything in there about access to the property?
Yeah, she would have access until the 22nd. Now, her intention, which I guess if I thought critically about it, I would have known. But I didn't really think about it, the fact that when she drives down there, she was anticipating being able to stay.
I don't think you could have ever figured that out necessarily without explicitly asking that, though.
If I thought about it, that would have been like, yeah, but what are you gonna do to get stuff out there?
Yeah, she has to get back in there.
Who represents the buyer?
A Jack White licensee.
Can you speak to them and have them
Yeah, we're working on it
come
now.
to an agreement where, because that is a long trip, and after spending a whole day there loading stuff, I mean, it's not unreasonable. If the guy's not even in state, that shouldn't really bother him whatsoever. Just,
We actually think, Gene, that the other realtor's a bit of an instigator as well. We think that she's overreacting to what shouldn't be any kind of a problem whatsoever. I don't know if she's a heroin licensee or not, but she's having a meltdown, and I'm not sure herself, the buyer is. I think it's just the broker having a meltdown.
I mean, it was probably instigated by the buyer, but there's not much.
She's not trying to solve the problem, she's getting more and more.
Okay, so here's the thing, all right? And the contract is over, so that licensee has nothing to do with the buyer or the seller anymore, okay?
Right.
The agreement now is between the buyer and the seller.
Sure.
So what you need to do is get the buyer's contact information, and on behalf of the seller, contact him directly and get that licensee out of the whole situation. Because if she's an instigator, she's causing all these problems, you don't want her part of this. So explain to her that you just need to go directly to the owner now. Or the seller needs to go directly to the owner and come to some agreement and get that person out of the transaction. Because actually she's no longer part of the transaction because it's done recorded and somebody else owns the property. So she really, as a licensee, has no business meddling in this whole thing.
That's probably a good advice. The only issue is the seller is an elderly lady. and she leaned on Billy to guide her through this.
And that's why Billy should contact the owner now.
Work it out.
Because you're really not doing anything illegal because the transaction's recorded. Now you're just helping your seller negotiate with the owner of the property.
Sure.
And if this licensee is being a problem, you need to just kind of get her out of the whole equation.
So, and I understand that what he's doing is really serving the best interest of his client, but on the reverse side, if the contract's signed, then he doesn't have any, he has the same level of dismissal as you're applying to the other
Absolutely.
licensee.
You better. Yeah, because, just like an occupancy after recording, right? It's no longer, you did your job, the selling licensee did their job. Okay, so you're really no longer part of this whole transaction. It's between the buyer and seller now. Okay? So he would just be working on her behalf as a friend, more or less. Okay?
We are thinking though, whatever the seller and the buyer agree on going forward, of putting something in writing as a Word document, but attached to it would be the insurance binder of both the seller and the buyer. She still has insurance on the property as well within the binder. So we think that proving, since Billy's involved, fortunately or unfortunately, that at least we've dotted i's and crossed t's with the insurance binders.
Exactly.
He's the building permit.
Yeah.
And an incentive would be maybe, because we got about a month and a half left, 2 months.
Yeah.
Actually. Maybe offer him some type of rental to occupancy
Gene, I don't
rental.
agree with that. In the purchase and sale agreement, she's been given access to get her stuff at no cost. So I don't think.
Yeah, but because she wants to spend the night every time she goes down there, then it would be an occupancy after the fact. So you might approach it that, and he would be more open to it, and the fact that she's still gonna have insurance on it, covering the property, and put him as a writer on there as well, because now he's the owner.
What we've got so far, and I did go down there yesterday, and I was able to speak face to face with the licensees and Stacy down there. I think we're all working toward a win-win now. So she is going to try to talk to the buyer and see if he's agreeable to, with, plan well in advance, weekends or whatever, have designated points. Would he allow someone to come in and, stay the night and sort through 50 years of things?
She's not started moving at all yet? Or?
This past weekend was the first time, and it was cut very short.
So she has a long way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that buyer needs to be alone as well. What are we out there?
It's strange. In Anchorage, people think that. It's a dock on the hill.
Think what?
Anyway, the moral of the story is, we'll get on to successful real estate stories, not that are unpleasant, but the moral of the story.
Thanks, everybody.
It was successful. It closed.
Yeah.
The moral of the story is, you always have to think about what it, in this business, no matter how perfect something looks, think about what it's. What if she spends the night? Who would have thought of that? I would never have even given that a thought.
Yeah,
one way or the other.
You were discussing the items within the property,
Yeah.
and you were concerned about her getting the stuff out of the property. So, I mean, I honestly can totally relate with what you're coming up with, because that would have come into the forefront of my
I
mind.
thought that would become an issue. The lady lived it. It's not like this happened as a Taj Mahal. She's not gonna, break it.
Pitch a tent on the front yard.
He's not even in the state.
I know.
So
That's
get over it.
How did they even figure out she was there?
The neighbor.
neighbors.
A neighbor who's a friend of the buyer.
Interesting.
Oh my God.
So who knows?
Gladys Kravitz.
But I think Gene's advice to extract yourself as much as possible is a good idea, but you can't leave this lady stranded. If the seller and the buyer were able to handle themselves, that's one thing, but we can't exceed the slave. Good, so you did what you have to do, including driving down there. All right, here we go. Okay, we've done any success stories, problem, any other field problems? I don't want to hear any more problems. So is there any other problems? Tell me no problems. Okay, the most successful real estate story. The rules are, everyone tells, and this is why we didn't want to give you too much advance notice, because we didn't want anybody to make up one. Everyone tells the most successful real estate story to date, even if you've been in business for just a few days. We make useful notes from everyone's individual story, including Billy's today. Grade each person's story on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the best, based upon useful content, interesting presentation, and best takeaway. And we have 30 minutes to do this. So we're going to start with Karl. We're just going to work around the room.
You go the other way around?
No, we're going to do it. So just say, I'm Karl, and here's my story, and you guys put Karl's name down on your list, and we'll go from there. So Karl, you're on.
I'm Karl. Here's my story. Well, I was thinking my various transactions, many of which have gone successfully, and I feel really great about those. Overcoming adversity, coordinating, communicating with people, those are all very successful things. But what I want to start us off with today is a little tale I like to tell about, actually not about a particular transaction, but my work in real estate in general. Let us begin.
He wants a high score on presentation.
Apparently.
And I prepared this slideshow too. So I started in real estate, doing property management for condominiums and homeowners associations, working as an unlicensed assistant, and then by asking to take on more and more responsibility around the office, ultimately came to a point that I needed to be licensed. And so that company was very gracious and paid for my license. And then, of course, I rewarded them with solid hard work. And then from that point, I would ask to take on even more responsibility. And it just continued to be a trend there. Jump forward a little bit. Now I'm working for Kathy here at Jack White, doing buying and selling. And I don't have any clients starting out with. I had one. But so without, people to work with and listings to maintain, I have to take on more and more responsibility around the office. And then, as gradually as I became more proficient in one particular thing, I would either ask to take on more or annoy Kathy to no end by saying, well, we should change the way you do things, because that's what every boss enjoys hearing.
After 40 plus years, but that's okay, Karl. Yeah, keep going.
And so, and as professionally as I can, but so still continuing the theme of like asking to take on more and more responsibility. I've accumulated a lot of experience in the last couple of years. I've worked on not just acknowledging the transactions gone on for the team, but actually worked in almost all of them if they didn't belong to someone else. And that's been hugely beneficial. I've learned a great deal. And instead of having like 50 transactions of my own to learn from, I've been able to learn from the teams and really celebrate my learning there. And I like to think that is a very good success that I mean to maintain and carry on.
So I'm going to add something to that. Something that I heard about. Maybe it was at the liaison meeting where we were talking about some of the other real estate companies where when you were on a team, you're only allowed to show houses, maybe write an offer, and then they take the deal away from you and they give it to a team administrator person, which sounds maybe superficially for those who don't like the details, it sounds awesome, but here's what happens. You completely lose contact with your client. Your client is confused. They want to work with you in first place, and suddenly they can't even get to you. They're going to straighter. And the rest of the story is you as a realtor with the potential for being a solo realtor, earning the full commission on your own, minus your expenses. You don't know how to process the transaction if you let somebody else do it for you. And that kind of, and I didn't think about this, but what I learned at the liaison meeting was that maybe in part why the team leaders do that, so they don't, so their team members stick with them because they don't know how to, they don't know how to get out on their own.
Yeah, keep them dumb.
What was that?
Keep them dumb.
So,
They're afraid to do a transaction.
so I think Karl's useful takeaway is the ability to run 150% of the transaction. So one
With a
day,
safety,
what was that?
with a safety net.
With a safety, yeah. But that also means that eventually, if he chooses not to have a safety net, he knows what he's doing. So we could have a good clean deal. Okay, oh, that's beautiful.
That's 5 worth is what I think that is. It's beautiful and worth a 5.
Was that
Really
the end
worthy.
of the story?
He's also trying to sell himself.
Good job, Carl.
Okay,
Thank you.
around the table, give us your name and tell us your.
Okay, I'm Brian Williams, and I'm pretty new. From what I've gathered so far since I started, and what it seems, the thing that makes stories successful is relationships. In a nutshell, and maybe relationships is the right way to put it, how you interact with people. And when you make your transactions, I think, more personal than business transactions. And that being said, just looking after your clients needs before in their world and not in your world that you have it. This is just a job. I've learned that it takes really good organizational skills, time management skills, and preparation skills. And I even have an example of preparation skills. I did an open house for another licensee, and I did things that I thought I was expected to do, and went out and put out the signs and went to the open house and sat there all day by myself. And so it was a learning experience for me. I think there were more things that I could do to prepare the day that I spent there, marketing-wise, for the open house.
Did the licensee give you any suggestions?
I, not from the listing licensee, but from after the fact, I went in and talked to some other licensees and an associate broker, and just asked for advice on what I could do to better manage that. And then I also get the bombardment of emails from the MLS about all the properties. I'm not exactly sure what that's called.
Spam filter.
But it's a way to market your open houses too, and that's something that I did do. And you probably have to do just about every avenue of marketing.
As a Matt, Brian, I'm really glad you brought it up. I talked to the young lady that was talking about her builder.
Oh, Jocelyn.
Jocelyn. And we're going to have, Jocelyn actually had many roles here at Jack White. She used to work in accounting. She's also on Naomi's Lease. She used to work in accounting, and then she became a licensee here, left and has come back. And Jocelyn's very, very smart, but she's an incredible marketer. And she's going to do a marketing under listings presentation at Trenches for us. I talked to her about that in May. And she always has some really good ideas. And she used to come to Trenches on a regular basis. We love to have her come. She showed up with a computer, and she's one of the people recommended multitasking with both things at once. But she was always giving us really good marketing. And so we're going to have her come in and I think that will help.
I've done 2 open houses since I got my license. One was for Jocelyn and one was for another licensee. And Jocelyn's property had a visitor.
Yeah.
And she was very forthright, and it was an area, it was a street that had 4 properties on it, and they were all having open houses that weekend. And she had gone to every one of those licensees. Let's work together and get all these people on all of our properties. And it worked.
So the takeaway, you can make up your own takeaway, of course. I think the takeaway for me, for Brian, is that you're not always going to get track of it. It may not be your fault.
Well, there's just, you have to do all the work,
Yeah.
not just part of the work.
There's not much instant gratification. All right, you're next.
All right, my name is Suzanne Hall. I'm newish also. I've been here a little longer than Brian. I started in late July. And I would say the biggest, I guess, success for me is pushing myself out of my comfort zone so very much. Talking to people I wouldn't normally talk to. Learning to be a salesy type. I've never really had to do that in my life. I've never sat at a desk. I've never had a desk job. I'm learning that too. I'm a former high school teacher and a business owner, so I've never sat down. And I think that'll carry over to business too, not being able to sit there and listening. So pushing myself out of the comfort zone in terms of calling people and asking questions about foundation material, things like that, for instance, and listening and digesting long enough to really learn what they're talking about. It's really takes me back to my academic background. You have to be pretty intelligent in this business to make it, I think. You can't just wing it. You can't just say ask someone else. You have to do a lot of research on your own. You have to be willing to call people and spend 10 minutes talking on the phone and being patient. And that is a learning experience for me, patience and listening. I have to learn to be a better listener. I am not a good listener, I realize now that I've started this business. And I'm trying to be a better one. So I think that's it. I won't be successful. I won't have a successful story until I learn to listen more.
I mean, when you're listening, when you're on the phone or even talking to people face to face, you take notes.
I should do that. What I find myself doing is talking over them. Yeah. Interrupting them while they're.
And that's a lack of patience.
That's what it is. I want them to finish their sentence and get to the point. And I have to stop doing that. And I'm really embarrassed to say I just did yesterday. Talked over a person got me into the call and I realized I didn't hear everything.
Well, you know what the coolest thing is that you really want? That is the coolest thing ever.
That alone is a success story.
Oh my
It was
God.
embarrassing. Just like calling because if you would just say everything you just said, because I didn't hear anything you said.
I bet you earned brownie points if you did that.
Maybe I should call her again.
Just be like, I've got to be honest. I realized that what I was doing was talking over you, and I sincerely apologize. Can we start
I
over?
might get there. Yeah, maybe I'll get some guts and do it.
What's the first thing that she says?
What was it in regards to?
In regard, she was an open house attendee, and she wanted information about in a seismic zone what the foundation materials were made out of. She wanted to know if it had plastics from Japan and things like that. And I'm like, I don't know.
That's interesting.
So I said, let me call the builder, or let me call the licensee whose house it is, and they didn't want to fuss with it. So I said, okay, I'll talk to the builder. So I called the builder. That was in itself uncomfortable because I didn't really want to call him, but I did. We talked for a few minutes about all the questions I had, and it was really actually pleasant and very informative. Took notes. I had to take notes.
Good job.
So I could call the girl who asked the question, the 60-year-old girl anyway. And then I called the girl, and I told her all that stuff, but most of the time I was talking and not really letting her get a word in it. But I gave her the information she needed, so I don't feel horrible.
Yeah.
I was giving her information she wanted.
So
I would call her back and apologize.
Where's the
You would?
property?
Okay.
Out of curiosity, where's?
That Jernigan Highlands, $1 million, 1.1. And That's another question. How do you know if someone's a serious buyer?
Well, I was just gonna say, so what should her last question, first of all, the best salespeople in the world don't talk, they just ask questions, and they listen really, really well. So anybody on my team, what should have been her last question before she kisses this lady goodbye?
Show me the money.
Buy the house. Sure.
Say it again, right?
That's it.
So does that make you want to buy the house?
Are you sure buying the house? Gee,
Show me the money.
okay. Carl, yeah. So now that we've chatted about this house and I've told you what I know, which isn't very much about representation, would you have an interest in offer on this one today?
Would you be paying cash or would you be getting a
Yeah,
new loan?
And if you're interested, are you paying cash or creating a loan?
I kind of edged it. I did address that somewhat, but I
With
wouldn't
cash
ask
or
for it.
new loan, or did you ask for the loan?
I said, if you're a serious buyer for this property, I hope it answers your question.
Well, that's a good start. Call her today and see if she wants to buy, now that she knows so much.
Ask her the question.
So the takeaway is, takeaway would be ask questions of the appraisers.
Stay tiny.
A great
Their
question.
interest, not yours.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The great question at the end of that, a serious answer to, is this a property that you're interested in?
Sure.
And if not, can I come up with a property that you might be
Yeah.
interested
Can
in?
you come in and we can come up with some property?
Yeah, I'll do it. No, that's a warm prospect, and you need to hang on to that lady. Okay, all right. Bill, you're next. Okay, Kathy's next.
That was a good try.
She wants to go last for,
Well, every time you tell us, everyone says something, I think it's another story.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm just gonna tell you a funny story, but there's a message there. The funny story is, when I first got in the real estate business, I think I was a single parent at the time, working a full-time day job and selling real estate at night and on the weekends, because I needed the money, and I felt, and I felt I was probably gonna be okay in sales, because I've always been somewhat persuasive, and I'm not afraid to talk to people. And I was on the floor, I don't know, Gene, I don't know how long you've been around, but do you remember Skyway Realty? 1,000 years ago on Spinard Road, where the Fly-By-Night Club eventually landed.
That was the building we were with?
Yeah, it was called Skyway Realty, and it was a little one-story piece of junk building on Spinard Road.
There.
Probably is
It
still
is.
there.
It is.
Yeah.
Terrace House Rock, Taproot, now it's for sale.
Route 33. It was also like Route 33 for a hot minute.
Or cold.
Anyway, that's where I started my career, and I would go in and take the afternoon or the evening floor time. And you always did floor there. That's the only way you ever got leads. Very few people walked into Skyway Realty. But somehow on floor, I got a call from a group of people who wanted to buy a church. Now, I've been in the business less than a year, and I didn't know anything about anything, especially nothing about churches. But I had enough sense, and I've never been smart enough to turn anything down, as I've gotten smarter, I've learned to say no. But these people wanted to buy a church. So I said, I can help you with that, I can sell you a church. I mean, I hadn't spent a whole lot of my life in a church, but I figured I could sell a church. You don't have to be there. You have to worship to sell a church. Anyway, so I went on the MLS, which at the time was a book. I think it was still a book, and maybe it was Finding the Dross. And I think I identified 3 churches. And of the 3 churches, they only wanted to look at one church, and it was a group of people. And I had never been in the church, so there's the takeaways here. I never went there and previewed the church, but it didn't matter. I could sell the church. I just could look at what the listing had to say, and I determined they were serious buyers. And so we're walking through the church, up the aisles towards the front of the church, and then we walk up some stairs, and there's where the minister typically stands. And I'm now facing these nice people, and I've got heels on and everything. And I'm talking to them, walking backward, being the best salesperson of the world. And eventually, and very shortly thereafter, step into the baptismal water that was 3 steps down. And high-heeled shoes and the whole 9 yards.
So that's very symbolic.
So, but here's the deal.
That's very
That's right, very
symbolic.
symbolic.
Did you actually go all the way in?
I went all in, but I was so intent on not letting myself be distracted or flustered. I just kept walking through that water, walked up the other side and kept talking to them.
Oh my
Probably
gosh.
talking way too much to be a good salesperson. Needless to say, they didn't buy the church.
Oh, no.
They certainly didn't work with me anymore after that. They knew I didn't know a thing about the church. So I think the takeaway is know your product. That's my story. I'm trying to be. Know your product. All right.
You're saving that 5 for you, aren't you?
No.
His Jim is scoring.
Yeah.
My name is Bill.
They call me Billy. Yeah. Okay.
Too many summer camps.
I am Billy Whitney. I've been sitting here writing down different clients that I've successfully sold houses and represented in the purchase of real estate. About half of my clients have been veterans, which is always heartwarming. I've helped widows and sons of deceased fathers and families purchasing together, a brother and sister bought for their mom, all kinds of nice stories. But my most successful story, and I'm going to start telling it the way every good story in the Marine Corps starts. So there I was. I had just come back from MP training. I was hanging sheetrock, and I got a call from Kathy Fernandez saying, "Would you like to sell real estate?" And of course, I said no. I'm going to be
Great salesman.
I'm going to be a police officer. I'm going to the October Academy. And she said, "Oh, well, that's too bad. Keep me in mind if anything changes." And a month to the day later, I found out I would no longer be proceeding in the hiring procedure for APD. So I called Kathy and said, "Do you still have a position?" She said, "No, it's been filled." But I'll make one for you. I think you would be good at selling real estate. So before I was allowed to join the team, she told me that I needed to write 200 names of all of my friends and family and their friends and family, everybody that I knew, write at least 200 names, which I did. I started calling them my second day. I started calling them my first day, but on the second day, I called a buddy of mine and said, "Hey, I just got into real estate. Do you need a hand selling that condo that you've been living in since you were 18 years old?" And he said, "You know what? Yes." He has a wife and 2 kids now, so it's time to upgrade. It was a crappy little condo in Skyview. Skyvilla. Yep. So the second day, I called him. I got an appointment for my second week. It was my second listing appointment. And of course, having Kathy having my back, I got the listing. And 8 months later, we were able to sell it.
That's really good.
And they were able to buy a home, which I also represented them on, for 4 times that amount. And since then, I've had 1 transaction because of a referral from them. And I don't know if we're saying our own takeaways, if we're.
No, I think you should. Yeah.
Okay, so the takeaway is there's a lot of good theories out there that actually work. The basics of writing down who you have, who you know, and then actually calling them works. And don't be afraid to ask for referrals. If you do a good enough job representing somebody, you can probably get a referral based on harvesting your personal relationships. There you go.
I like it. Harvest. Yeah, you want yourself working with your personal relationship. You don't want some other realtor. And if you haven't asked them for the business, you have done them a terrible disservice. You've allowed somebody else that's not going to be as good as you to try to take them. Hardest personal referral. Amanda, you must have lots of stories.
I know what your success story is. You got Billy's job.
No kidding. The year is 2015. Her name is Amanda. But basically, this is the story of how I came to work for Kathy. I'm going to put off these guys here. So I was a hotshot wardrobe consultant over at your local men's warehouse. Thought I knew it all. Was ready to go. Who knew what else life had in store for me? And at the time, one of my really good friends got a job at the receptionist desk over there in commercial. And we thought it would be cool to work in the same building and blah, blah, blah. So I came and I turned in my resume to Mary Coolbrook, actually. I don't know how, but it ended up in Kathy's hands. And I got a call a while later asking if I'd like to come in for a job interview. And I said, well, sure, of course. So I got all dressed up, put on my black and white, and I went and met with Kathy. And she went ahead and hired me, and I started work for her. And that was when I realized I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. And Kathy so politely informed me of how things were done in real estate. And so I've been able to learn a lot from her. And my takeaway here is to always be looking around the corner for what's coming next, whether that be your next client or whatever. So that was my most successful story. And then I came to work for you. But continuing on in my foggy, hotshot wardrobe
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because when I first got into real estate, at probably early 30s, I thought I was really smart. I thought I knew everything there was to know about everything, and real estate totally threw me to the ground and said, you don't know anything. Because when you're so self-centered, you cannot be a good realtor, because it's really about the client. Yeah.
3 years later, I still learn.
Oh, I'm still learning.
All the time.
I just learned really strong.
It's pretty humbling. I've been running a business for 30 years, and I've been the top of the food chain. And then at the top of the
It's
If you've been there, Brian, you will be again. Because you obviously are not going to get unless you're sick. And it is very humbling. Every deal I did not give, I sat down and I analyzed what I had done. And I was doing so many things wrong. And, you know, it just learn.
So I do have you basically told how you came to meet Kathy. He said that he met you because you called him. How did you find him?
I've known Kathy's daughter for 16 years, and so I met Kathy through her daughter.
Okay.
And
So you guys knew each other.
Trenches we talked about were spins.
We did.
So if last trenches we brought up the fact that I pawned my sister's dog off on Kathy.
Right. Okay. That's right there.
So yeah, we've known each other for a long
The
time.
common denominator though for Billy and my daughter and Karl is theater.
Yeah, the local theater.
How did you ever come to have my resume?
From Naomi's sister.
Oh,
The resume was given to Lease. Lease knew I was looking for somebody and brought it to me.
huh.
It was Elise that really put us together. Elise was part of the first interview.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very, very, very
It was
great.
Elise.
Yeah.
That's a nice story, Amanda. What's the takeaway for Amanda? You kind of told us what it was. Just learn to
Always
Look for what's coming next.
Always be looking for
Look
what's
forward.
coming next. Look forward.
don't think you know it all.
Also, you know nothing.
Be open-minded.
That's pretty good. You're young to be realizing that. You know, most people hit their change of 40 something, and they really didn't.
Kathy has helped me grow up very quick, which has been very nice.
I've gotten gray over it.
Oh, you are.
It doesn't end. It doesn't end. You keep going.
In our employment contract, there's no word called adoption, but I feel.
Can I say? So when I came to work for Kathy, right, I walk into the interview room and it's her and Robin. And I says, okay, Robin's in her 30s. Okay, Kathy's in her late 40s, early 50s. A year goes by, right? We get to Kathy's birthday. I find out.
She's older than 40.
She's older than 40, yes.
You just saved her job for
Yes.
Good that you spoke up when you did.
Good job.
You just saved it.
Moving on quickly, Jean.
My name is Gene. The story actually started back in 2015 when I sold the house over on Morgan Loop. And just last year, the buyers of that house actually wanted to upgrade. So we put the property on the market. We started the property out about $610,000. We weren't getting a lot of activity, so of course you go back, tell them get a price reduction, price reduction, price reduction. So we're sort of sitting around $570,000. Middle of winter this year. Not a lot of activity going on, talking about taking it off the market. All of a sudden somebody shows up and says, we want to do a lease purchase on your house, so we want to occupy for 2 years before we buy it out. I just got a divorce, blah, blah, blah. This is what we need to do. So I sat down with her licensee and I said, okay, well, before I present this to my sellers, we need to kind of understand what you're coming to the table with. So we came up with some preliminary numbers and I took it to my sellers and I said, listen, this is a lease purchase option. It'll give you an opportunity to get out of the house, go out and purchase the house that you are interested in. So anytime you do an occupancy or early occupancy for a lease purchase option, it's kind of iffy. So I wrote up this huge Amendment A that I attached to it. And in doing so, I asked for $60,000 down payment. Okay? Non-refundable. We're going to do the home inspection, we're going to do the appraisal, everything up front. Everything's going to be non-refundable from the time we finish the repairs. It's a done deal. Okay? You're going to rent the house for X amount of dollars a month for the next 2 years. So I get them to sign all the paperwork. So I mean, I've got her locked in. I mean, she's tight. Well, come to find out, she wants to purchase the house. So we said, okay, well, in the Amendment A clause, I put in there, regardless of whether the house, because we didn't know what it was going to appraise for in 2 years. We had no idea, you know. So I put a clause in there saying, hey, the house does not have to appraise. They agreed to it. She came in, she offered us $610,000. Okay, why she didn't offer us the price we had it listed for, I don't know. I guess it's an incentive. $610,000, $60,000 down payment on the property. She decides she's going to purchase the house, so we have to go ahead and get an appraisal. Now, 2 years down the road, $610,000 may have worked. Okay, it came in low. The appraisal came in. Actually, we had it listed for $590. The appraisal came in at $570.
Ooh.
So she had no choice. She had to buy the house. She said, "Well, we want to revert back to renting it for 2 years." Okay. And the reason they wanted to do that is because the numbers were so skewed that even with the $60,000 down, the financing kind of set things off to where it was going to cost her a lot of money anyway. So I got thinking about it. I was like, well, I went to the lender. I said, how can we do this? You know, how can we keep her in this contract? And she said, well, you could buy points down. I said, what would it cost to buy down points? Right? So if we bought her interest rate down, actually over a 30-year period, she'd be saving money. Right? So we kind of reverse engineered it. So I went to her selling licensee. I went to her, the one that she was representing. Well, first I went to the sellers and I said, listen, she wants to rent it, but with renting comes a lot of headaches. There's a million different things can go on in 2 years. You know, so I would suggest staying with the contract. If we could get her purchased, here's what's going to have to happen. We're going to have to buy her points down. So basically her house payment stays the same because there's such a difference that $60,000 really doesn't cover what she was trying to do. So they said, okay, you know, we'll pay $15,000 and their closing costs, right? I'm the kind of guy that always gives a really bad news up front, okay? So then I work backwards from the bad news. So I gave my sellers the option of paying her $15,000 in their closing costs, which would help her buy down the points. So then I went to her licensee and I said, you know what? I said, we can keep her in this contract and we can close. I wasn't worried about the commission because I'd written in there as soon as the repairs were done, everybody could get paid. So we were going to get, the licensees were going to get paid up front, okay, which was not refundable too.
Is that up to 60,000?
Yeah, yep. So I went to her licensee. I said, you know what? I said, you know, I'd really like to see this thing close. I hate to stretch this thing out for 2 years. How about if you pitch some money in so we can buy down her points? He says, oh, okay. So what were you thinking? I said, $5,000. $5,000 will help a lot. He said, oh, okay. Yeah, I can do that. I'll reduce my commission by $5,000. So then I went to the lender. I said, hey, lender. I said, you know, we did all this work, and if she rents this property, all your work's for nothing because she doesn't need a loan and your bank's not going to make any money. How about if you help buy down these points? So I said, well, what were you thinking? $5,000, you know, $5,000, that'll help. So then I went to my sellers. I said, you know what? I said, I got some good news. I said, I got the selling licensee to pitch in $5,000 and I got the lender to pitch in $5,000. So you only need to come to the table with $5,000. I didn't mention that. I didn't touch my commission, right? Because I'm doing all this hard work, right? I deserve it. So anyway, the story is we got it all closed and we didn't have to rent it, which is a beautiful thing. So we sold the house $30,000 over the
Okay, so goodness, what is the takeaway? Be afraid of paper?
Never give up.
Don't give up.
Think outside the
Story I like
box.
is you didn't give up your commission.
Well,
Thank you very much.
that's seizing opportunities.
Well, you went and asked for things.
That's a good point.
And, I mean, all they can say is no, but every time you ask, they said yes. And they would have never said yes if you hadn't asked to begin with.
Well, you have to ask. Yep. Never, ever be afraid. And that's what I tell all my buyers is if you don't ask, you don't receive.
That's why you have to get out of your comfort zone and go out there and talk to people.
You do. Yeah.
Gene, how much do you believe in verbal negotiations, or are you a let's put it in writing and see what they say kind of guy?
No, verbal negotiations is effective. Okay? You can, you know, just like I just wrote a contract up at Triplex. We probably had 5 different counter offers. Okay? When it's all said and done, I threw them all in the garbage and rewrote the contract.
Right.
Because, you know, we've been negotiating now for 7 days. all my dates and everything in my contract are bad, you know? I mean, if we agreed to it right then we'd have like 3 days to get a home inspection. Okay, then that jeopardizes it. Earnest monies, repair deadlines, all this kind of stuff. So verbal negotiating is a good thing. I mean, always, never get excited.
Right.
I mean, never get angry because, you know, when the voice goes up, the ears close. Okay? So try, if you feel upset, try to step back from it, look at it for a little while, and then reapproach it, you know, with a cool mind. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, I was skeptical, but about the whole 2-year lease thing. It's a slippery slope. But it all worked out. It really did. You know, once I heard that she was willing to purchase the property, that appraisal, man, when I heard that appraisal number come back, I mean, it was like, oof, you know. But you can't I've heard of people successfully arguing with appraisers, okay? But you're not going to do it.
You know what I think? I think that buyer was undersold.
I agree.
There were so many pitfalls in that long document you wrote, holding that door. Yeah, that was a very uncovered one. I know it wasn't a Jack White.
No, she's a very experienced realtor. She's been in the business for a lot of years.
She must have just wanted to finish it.
I don't know. I think it was an act of God, to be honest with you.
That you were on the other side to help it.
It was, yeah, because, you know, it's a long story. But yeah, there were angels involved, I feel, you know, on my behalf, because, you know, I mean, I came off a rough year last year, and the person on the other side happened to be an acquaintance of somebody that I knew that passed away. And, you know, it was a blessing. It really a blessing. It was. It all came together.
Let's say that you went down the 2-year lease road and the property depreciated even more. How would she buy it?
Well,
And it's practical.
come up to the table with more money.
Yeah.
The only way she could.
Yeah.
What if she was unable though? So what if,
Well, then she would lose the property.
and then she's
And $60,000.
$60,000.
Yeah.
Chelsea, let's hear your story.
Well, so I have a choose your own adventure because while you guys were all saying your stories, I naturally thought of more stories. So I have 3 different stories and you can choose which one you want to hear.
Okay.
So I have the story of me brand new into real estate and how I got into real estate. I have the story of a short sale that took me 2 years to close as a realtor. And then I have a story of a complicated closing that I inherited from a different escrow officer that left our company with someone who was deployed using a power of attorney. And a realtor got fired during the transaction.
I only want that one if you give actual names.
No.
Then I want the middle one.
Okay, so who wants number 1?
Which one's number 1
That's
again?
my coming into real estate story. Jean, you're not raising your hand? Okay.
3 hands for number 1.
So 2 hands for number 1. Number 2, short sale that took me 2 years.
Boring.
Okay. And number 3, my difficult closing story.
We're going to learn from that one.
All right, cool. Okay. I'll save the other ones for later. So my difficult closing story, as a brand new escrow officer, I was an assistant over there for close to a year, and then I worked closely with Kristen Martin, who was our escrow manager at the time, as well as Christy Nugent, who's one of our senior escrow officers right now. So as a new escrow officer, I inherited closing files of ones that I worked on directly with Kristen Martin when she left us and went for you call it now. So Reeboks. I think she works for Reeboks. So I inherited this closing, and it was a transaction that had already been going on for probably 6 to 8 months. And it was just a long one. The borrower
was deployed overseas. Her husband was also deployed overseas. They were using Quicken loans, and they gave power of attorney to somebody that was also in the military who had no financial attachment or emotional interest vested in this transaction at all. So
the buyer and seller used the same POA.
the seller was out of state. So
Oh,
That was
the
totally-
buyer- only the buyer needed.
only the buyer needed a power of attorney, yes, but the seller was out of state, which makes it more complicated and adds another layer to the onion. So long story short, this buyer is very difficult, not only to get a hold of, but also to work with. Fired their realtor at one point.
The power of attorney or the deployed?
The deployed buyer.
How do you?
Oh, you trust me, if you were the realtor, you'd want to be fired too. You just would get over it. They still got paid a commission because a commission was due, but I don't blame them. So, but I don't get that. I have to still go through the whole rest of it. So here this person is who gets out of it. So we come to closing. So we've already sent documents out to the seller and they come back. We have the seller's originals. We're ready to go. We're ready to close. We can't get a hold of the power of attorney at all. And so when we finally do get a hold of the power of attorney, I coordinate an appointment for them to close, only for that person to call me back and say, no, I need to close in your Eagle River office. So I coordinate it with my Eagle River office. I send all of my original documents out to my Eagle River office for them to sign. He doesn't show up. Mind you, I sent him to my Eagle River office with an escrow officer from Anchorage because it was the end of the month and we didn't have the manpower to have an extra closing at that time. So he doesn't show up. Call him. Yeah, I can be there between this time. Well, my person in Anchorage has to come back because that person has appointments in Anchorage. So I had another person in our Eagle River office try and take the closing. Doesn't show up again. So all my documents have to be redrawn because I think it carries over into a new month. And my original documents that were out there, well, I sent an original copy of an original of the power of attorney to my office out there, which got misplaced by somebody that doesn't work with us anymore. But anyway, so that document got misplaced and I'm panicking because this person's overseas. I don't have my original. Where is it? I'm coming out there. I don't care. I will rip your office apart until I find it because I know you have it. Sure enough, we find it.
Where?
It was in the shred bin, and luckily they had already picked up the shred earlier that day, so it did not get shredded. So that's my slight success within my giant success story. So we rescheduled the guy, and that same person has to drive out to our Eagle River office to sign. Mind you, he has to sign everything, power of attorney for 2 people, and if you've ever done a transaction with powers of attorney, yep, we had to do that. So the person that closed the transaction for me in Eagle River missed initials on documents to be recorded. So I had to contact this person back and say, this transaction has to record. If it doesn't record, the lock is expiring, blah, 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 blah. Anything that could be wrong with this transaction was wrong with this transaction. So I call the guy. And I'm like, I don't care where you are. I will meet you wherever you are. I just need to get this transaction done. I do not care. I will go on base. I will drive to Fairbanks if you're in Fairbanks. This thing has to close. So I meet him at the Wendy's outside. True story. I meet him at the Wendy's outside of the base because I can't get on base. After hours, I had to meet him at like 6 o'clock because that was the only time I could meet him. And I go through and I get all these documents done. And mind you, when you're done signing a transaction, the work is not over for your title people. The work is just beginning.
So after that, I was like, I don't care. I asked for overtime. I'm like, I'm staying here until I'm done with this file. And it was on a Friday afternoon, so naturally I couldn't sleep all weekend until it finally recorded on Monday. So yeah, it recorded. And I mean, transactions like that never go away. I've honestly had conversations with that buyer since then for things that she needed regarding her property. Like, it's not over after the transaction is over. I actually just talked to her a month ago.
The same person.
Yeah, and I closed this transaction like 2 years ago.
What was she calling for?
She didn't want her husband to be on title when she purchased the property and blah, 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 and how does she get it changed? And I'm like, he's on the loan with you. Like, I can't change that for you. That was something you should have done at the very beginning.
So don't become a title officer.
Yeah, I was
Liquid real estate.
yeah, well, no, I mean, I would just say that it's kind of a similar takeaway to Jean's, that not to give up. Or to make sure you have a title person that won't give up. Because,
I've got to suck it up and get it done.
Be persistent.
Or
yeah,
tenacious.
yeah,
And patient.
and yeah.
And patient, I like that. Okay, everybody put your name at the top of the sheet, because you're gonna get your sheet back, and this is how we're gonna score them.
Wait a second. How did, who got fired?
But the realtor, the buyer's realtor.
Yeah.
Well, no, there was a title. for
Oh,
that.
fired from
Yeah.
representing them.
Yes.
I thought you meant like,
No, the realtor got
The-
fired from
Oh.
representing them.
okay.
And then was a pain in the butt to deal with because they didn't want anything to do with the transaction other than getting their money. And
All
then
good news.
as far as the title people, it's been 2 years and there are people that have come and gone from our office that aren't with us anymore. So, I mean, I inherited the file. It's not like it was mine at the very beginning. My lovely my escrow manager left that file for me because I had already done all the legwork with the mail out and everything when I was her assistant. So naturally I would inherit
It
it.
was yours.
It was mine. It was destined to be mine.
I'd say in your preview, I expected a realtor to get fired from their brokerage.
Ah, he doesn't work there anymore.
Was it my choice?
I don't know that. I don't know that.
All right, it's 4-3. You guys can go. I'm gonna go ahead and score these, and we will announce the winner of the most successful real estate store. And then we're gonna get these back to you. So you can have
Is
it.
for them today?
I'm gonna go straight to them right now
Oh, man.
with the calculator. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your great
Thank you very much,
service. Jean, thanks for showing up. Your
Yeah, Jean.
I expect those 5 extra points on